Hey folks, today we're going to change the thermostat and radiator hoses on a 3.7 liter engine. It's a Jeep product, but they're similar to a Dodge and Ram engines. That's a recovery tank. You have the upper hose on the right hand side, lower hose on the left hand side. Reach down, you can see the petcock on the very bottom there. That's to drain the radiator and the cooling system. Before you do anything, make sure that the coolant is cool to the touch so you don't scald yourself. Then you go ahead and open up the petcock and drain your radiator and most of the fluid out of your cooling system. Make sure you have a catch basin on the bottom there to catch all this fluid so it doesn't run down the street. To expedite the process, you go ahead and take the cap off the recovery tank. That'll break the vacuum in the system, and I'll let the cooling antifreeze flow out quicker. First thing to do is replace the upper hose by taking those two clamps off. Once the clamps are off, move the hose, get the new hose ready with the two new clamps, put that back on the radiator and the upper housing of the cooling system. Once it's on firmly, go ahead and tighten down those worm gear clamps to get a nice snug fit. Now we're going to work on the lower hose and loosen the two clamps, one on the radiator side and one on the lower housing. Once the clamps are loose, go ahead and pull the hose off. That bottom housing is where the thermostat is. We're going to take a closer look inside there and you'll see exactly where it sits, its orientation inside the housing. There it is, that little shiny triangle there. That's the thermostat. That's what we're going to replace. There are two bolts that hold the housing to the engine block. We'll take those two bolts off. The housing will come off with the thermostat embedded inside it. Once the bolts are out, there's the housing. Thermostat is embedded in the back of it. Pay close attention to the orientation of the weep hole, which allows air to seep through when the system is running so it doesn't get airbound. That's a little hole on top there. It's positioned in the 12 o'clock position inside the housing. That's the way you want to put the new one in. Facing up. Put it back in the housing. Push it in so it's nice and tight. Put the little hole facing the top. Put the housing back on the engine. And reattach the two bolts. I put a little NSCs on the bolts so they don't get rusted into the engine block. In case I have to do this again later on, it won't be a hassle. To an awkward position, so it's very hard to to see what you're doing. All of this is done by feel. It'd be a lot easier if it was up on a jacks on a stand or on a lift. You can reach it from below the engine, but from the top it's a little tedious, time consuming, but it's doable. Once it's seated and it's nice and tight, you go ahead and work your hoses back on with the 2 new clamps. New hose, new clamps, will last you forever. And as the same with the top hose, make sure it's seated. Put the clamps on snugly, or snugly. Make sure you don't have any leaks. Hate to fill it up with the antifreeze and realize you have a leak and now you have problems. So do this step correctly, since the bottom hose is going to be more critical than the top hose. When you're all done, make sure your petcock is back on. You'll hear it click when it's fully closed. And now you can go ahead and start filling the system back up. Mopar has their antifreeze that's 100%. So you need to cut it with the equal amount of water. So I do 1 jug of antifreeze, 1 jug of water until the system is full. And then I fill up the reservoir or the expansion tank with pure antifreeze up to the full mark and not higher. You don't want to overfill it because it creates a lot of pressure, and when it warms up and antifreeze starts to expand, it'll leak all over the place and make a mess. As you're filling it up, make sure the engine is running, so this way the antifreeze and water mixture gets distributed all over the engine and the cooling system and the heater, radiator, and that'll work the bubbles up onto the top of the engine. On the top of the engine housing, where the radiator attaches to the engine, there's a little bleeder valve. Just unscrew that a little bit. You'll start getting bubbles work their way out of the system as it purges itself of air. Once the bubbles stop and you get more antifreeze than the air, you can go ahead and close that up. I had to do it a couple times, and you can see there's still bubbles coming up. But once I was satisfied that the bubble stopped, I tightened it and topped off the reservoir with antifreeze. This is the last jug of water. You can see the full mark is right below that seam there. Try not to go any higher than that. Close it, run the engine, put the heat on high. Watch for the thermostat to open up. Make sure that it's working. Make sure you have heat coming out through the registers. Check for leaks, and you should be all done. Job well done. Save yourself a couple bucks. Alright folks, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Ciao for now.